Well, you guys know I got a real burr up my ass, especially when I'm doing this many videos today. You know who I am, the griever named John Weaver. Roseman, California, having an issue. It is still Friday the 4th of November, 2022, time index 4:19 p.m. The stories I'm running into is a high school band in Florida, Venice, Florida, is being denied part of a Disney parade of bands that they are celebrating on November 12th because of one particular school that has a mascot of a Native American Indian on it, complete with headdress. Disney is going ape over it and says you can't come here with that mascot, but you're welcome to stay in our parks. The band director and the principal have been trying to argue with Disney to allow them to express themselves. They had battled bands up the state like crazy, been in different championships to show that they are indeed a great high school band. And they wanted to show their expertise in a Disney parade. But Disney had changed their policies a long while ago, apparently, concerning about cultural differences, and anybody showing anything regarding Native Americans is being banned. Apparently there was one particular group that came in and said some things that normally they would say in their high school as part of their chant. Well, it's supposed to be like a high school chant while they're doing their thing, and it had a Native American mascot in this one particular school, and the way it was handled and the way it was being presented to the public, Disney said, nope, no more. So they put a stop on it. I thought one particular organization called the Young Turks would be able to pick up on it, but apparently they don't give a flying. They don't care. They only care about the national politics right now, and they're going ape over the damn thing. So they're talking about anything concerning about conservative, woke, and anything else regarding it. They're having a gay old time over this damn thing. I'm also sending a article from the Herald Tribune over to the Young Turks, or twerps, as I call them, and also Walt Disney World NT, WDW NT, not to mention I'm going to be sending one over to Disney Food Blog, because I need for them to understand this is a cultural sensitive topic that has to be discussed. This is the hardest damn thing I've ever tried to do because, hang on a second. We are dealing with a lot of sensitivity towards people's cultures, or trying to be anyway. In this politically correct society we have, not to mention being torn apart by extremes on both sides. Either try to be correct or incorrect, or just be crazy at the same time. We're trying to be sensitive to every damn culture we can be. Now, you probably heard me curse about this one and thinking, oh great, he's going to be saying something negative at this point over here, and therefore labeling him as probably one of those haters of anything. The truth of the matter is, I don't know how to say or talk about this in a delicate situation, except probably to use a blunt force of words at this point that probably will label me in one way or another. I'm trying to save face and trying to save opinion here. But the issues we're dealing with is cultural identities, stolen but also used for generations. High school's been doing it. We've had sports teams doing it. We've had professional and amateur schools using them. And the Native Americans are sick and tired of the damn thing, and they're saying enough's enough. Stop using our heritage for your identity. It's our heritage. I agree. It's like people trying to use someone else's heritage or lineage as their own identity. The problem is when you grow up in a kind of a culture where you've developed that kind of to dance around words on this one is hard enough anyway. And I'm supposed to be an English major? Shit. An English major at a community college out here in Antelope Valley, California. And I have to dance around with the words over here because if I happen to use the wrong dance, I'll be putting up either a rain cloud or a thunder cloud or waking up an earthquake over here. And this, by using the euphemisms and metaphors, I'm probably denigrating people at this point who are of Native American heritage. A high school must show its culture. But the thing I hadn't seen is a reach out to the Native American Seminole Nation. If any, if I hope any of the tribes still exist in one form or another, that the high school could have contacted to act as a go-between regarding an amusement park and their policies. If they were so hell-bent on showing the public and the world of their ability, they think to show it on a company such as Walt Disney World, which is supposed to be celebrating everyone else's culture, including their main park out in Florida, denying a high school their heritage right of doing so. But the heritage that they are using is of Native American. The rub, the problem. How would the Seminole Nation actually deal with this one, with this particular high school? Have they ever contacted the high school or even the school board of Venice and discussed situations with them? Would the Seminole Nation of Florida allow such a band to perform in public? If they could, if they would, if there was something acceptable about it, if it was something culturally enriching instead of insulting. But just having the mascot picture of an Indian embedded into a high school is causing enough controversy as it is. And while all the piranhas and the pilot fishes out there are sucking up on the main carnivorous creatures, trying to suck up any other kind of major news stories out there, this one is escaping everyone else's grasp on this. This is escaping the viewpoint. Because this isn't dealing with clashes of culture. Yes, we, descendants of the European colonists, had used, and probably still using, the Indians in a way to either denigrate or to expand upon their heritage and their identity. But apparently other people don't feel and share that way. There has to be discussions between the Indian nation and the rest of us, white folks, or everybody else of every other color and culture here, on how we can try to, I know, the dirty word and the insane word at this point over here, and if I happen to say it, it's going to be a labeling situation here, so let's say it anyway. Compromise. And there is the war cloud right there. Because how do you compromise on your own heritage and your culture when somebody else is exploding it like crazy and yet been dealing with it, and they look at it so innocently. Am I holding it against a high school for doing this situation? I guess I am. But I'm also trying to understand their point of view. I came from a high school that didn't celebrate Native American culture. No, I came from a culture that actually celebrated an animal, a cougar. Cougars that we're trying to kill left and right in our mountains without even realizing it one way or another. And this sucks. This royally absolutely sucks. I haven't heard that if we actually had any cultural identity of any Native Americans in the Los Angeles Unified School District when I was growing up. And at junior high, I had Patrick Henry Junior High. Actually, at Patrick Henry Junior High, we had Patrick Henry as our mascot, an American hero. But this, troubling. I have no idea and no clue on how to possibly resolve situations like this. In the end, regarding the high school in question, the Venice High School of Florida, using their Indian as a mascot, they are not denying a visit to Walt Disney World as patrons, as long as they're not showing their school colors. And they were told this. The band director is discussing this with his school and the students about it, and they're very disappointed. They wanted to show off their skills, but they can't do that in someone else's skin unless it's their own. Of course, I suppose the Native Americans, or even the Seminole Nation, would probably argue about this, because then we allow everybody else to do the same thing. So what's the fight about? How would our own identities be taken into account if they were also stolen somehow? Well, we European white colonists at this point over here, if you're going to be labeling me as a racist at this point over here, since I am part of the generation of that, about several generations, original ancestors did come from England, Germany, and Ireland, and Scotland. But primarily England. Part of the contingency that came over. There is a rumored in my genetic bloodline that one of the signers of the Pennsylvania delegation who signed on the Declaration and the Constitution of the United States is a distant relative to me. And probably was a property holder. Gets even worse, doesn't it? When you come up with that kind of distinction at this point over here. How would it be if my own damn reputation at this point would be considered against the things I don't like in the first place? I don't like slavery. I never did. And maybe Yuki trying to have even somebody serving me at home, even though if they're going to be a paid employee. I always did things on my own. I never did like anybody else trying to do stuff for me. I had to do it for everybody. That was the mindset I had all this time. But what gets to me is trying to understand All this mishandling of the culture is at this point over here. Hell, we've been doing that for a hell of a long generations. Well, we're about over 240 years old in this country, and we still can't get our act together. I think we're about, what, 246, I think. We still can't get our act together in this damn country of ours. We mislabeled and mislined the Chinese, the Japanese. We also mislined the blacks a hell of a lot. Not to mention the Irish. Nobody liked the Irish. And nobody liked the Italians either. Although we could deal with the Germans, or we could deal with the English at this point over here. The Scottish, well, maybe we got a problem with that one. I don't know. Or even French, my God. Hell of a melting pot we had back then. Even up to this point. Our ancestors, who are of the European lineage. Doesn't matter which particular country it is. Hell, they could be from Spain, and they could be all the way from France, Prussia, Norway, Sweden, Amsterdam, Switzerland. Any of those kind of territories that we've been dealing with. Coming over and telling the Native Americans, move it or lose it. We're coming through. And we did. We damn near almost wiped them out one way or another. Take out their cultural heritage, take out the humidity that they have concerning about European diseases at the stage, take out their culture and understanding what their religion and their faith-based understanding of everything else, trying to dissect and disseminate everything, denigrate them, but then hold to a point because we still needed to save that because what do we need to save? Because we run a hell-bent nation of destruction here. Would damn near destroy the entire Indian nation. The people were almost extinct. Handoffs and remnants living and trying to spread out beyond. Trying to integrate into our cultures. Trying to be part of us. And yet get treated differently. And how would I feel if part of my heritage was going to be put in the same magnifying or microscope glass? Be torn apart limb from limb to see what made my heritage tick, as we've done with everybody else, trying to see if they fit in. I understand here because I'm still waiting to see my dogs around here. Oh yeah, heritage. Heritage is a good thing. Heritage is a fine thing. The problem is heritage sometimes can hamper others. There has to be gray lines, but sometimes there just isn't any. Disney made a company decision. They didn't want to insult heritage or lineage, despite the fact that in good intentions that this one school who had been in existence for I don't know how long, how many decades, and it has generations of students graduating from it calling themselves Indians because of what they were growing up under. Stolen identity. it's no wonder that the Native Americans are having issues with the white man on this, with the European colonist. Because was there anything else we needed to steal at this point? We were supposed to be a land of the great American melting pot, and we couldn't even do that to anybody else, not even for those who have been here, because we thought they were more below us than anything else, and we treated them as such. Tried to be friends at one time, and then treated them as enemies, and then treated them as people to be locked up, humiliated. Oh, we could put them in shows and show them off left and right, but did that actually help them out? Or even take their children and decide to brainwash their generations? And they're still trying to recover what's left of their old and ancient heritage. Human beings can be the most cruelest creatures of the universe. We can also be kind about it too. But do we actually understand what the hell we're doing these days? Or are we totally out of our damn minds? How would I answer the situation regarding the high school who wants to show up and show off their talents? They'll have to live with the disappointment. Not every place is going to be receptive to what their own culture or identity is, even though it is presumably stolen culture or identity. How would it feel if we actually were reversed? I kid you not. What if we were in a situation where our own pathways had been altered? If our Europe continent was invaded by others long time ago, centuries ago, and deemed that they were going to be part of an empire, they had no choice. But I'm talking about at the time when we were going to be doing the same thing to the Native Americans by coming across the waters looking for different trade routes to Asia, and we find that there's one particular route we didn't understand, but we did. We finally understood that there was a new land to conquer, and we did. And we did. But I'm talking about that particular time when another invasion force would come right through Europe. Not from within, but from out. Let's just say that if there was sufficient forces in North America continent, from South America all the way through the Canadian border to the polar ice cap, let's just say there was a sufficient population in there, and they decided to go across the pond, as we call the Atlantic Ocean, and start trying to conquer different lands left and right. Now, I could try to use a different, somewhat example on this one. We did have the Roman Empire do the same damn thing all over the place for centuries, spreading as far as they could all the way over to England and Scotland. It took them generations, it took them centuries, hell, about a millennium roughly, with a hell of a lot of changes to their government systems, but they finally managed to get portions of Europe and The British Isles almost conquered, and then that was it. No more expansion. Then they all had issues with their own politics, their own rulers, divided their empire up. One half withered away, and the other half struggled for identity and keeping its empire until they also faded away. It did happen, spanning from Italy. But I'm talking about outside, beyond the Mediterranean, beyond the Atlantic. I mean, we're talking about what if. I'm saying just what if. I'm not trying to be I'm trying not to be racial at this point, okay? But I'm saying what if. If there was a sufficient colonization, if there was actually a sufficient civilization other than the Native Americans, or maybe the Native Americans, I don't know. But let's say, for example, there was sufficient enough people and they wanted to explore the other area because they heard of things. And they go start conquering it. How would we Europeans feel during that time? How would we be able to communicate with each other at this point over here? Because everything else would be nailed left and right. We deal with the bacteria content. We deal with the identity stripping at this point over here. There was many identities we had in Europe. Different languages. The Native Americans had the same thing. Different languages. Different nation. But they were not in for colonization, except for territories that they were trying to get into and sometimes battling with themselves to expand the territory to get more resources for their own tribes, for their own little nations. As much as I'm understanding history when I was going through it, through taking college courses. Trying to understand world history, U.S. history, California history, of where I came from. And what I have to put into perspective and trying to understand and analyze and see that in some occasions when we're trying to honor heritage, when we're trying to honor our lineage, we're going to be running into head with these situations over here. The immovable object versus the irresistible force. What's going to budge? In the situation dealing with a high school with Disney, they can go over there and enjoy the park, but only without the heritage. Because they also have to look at the heritage of everybody else, and they're trying to make sure that they are not insulting everybody. And that's a hell of a thing. And I'm trying to figure out and analyze, defend, attack, and then defend again Disney and the culture that they're trying to tap dance around. And not to mention the need of a high school here that has issues that I hadn't seen any opinion writers or the reporters are talking about what's going on. This should have been made national. This would have been a national discussion here, but we are so tied up with the elections right now as it is. This goes underneath the table here. And I'm just trying to put this into perspective. Now, I don't want to insult heritage or lineage. I'm trying to understand. There are certain lines we cannot cross, and we're going to be hurting like hell because of it. And even if it's stolen identity that our current generation had never stolen, but we're still using. That's the thing that the Native Americans are really pissed off at us about, because they're not quite sure how to handle that. How to handle our own ignorance and arrogance without even realizing what harm and damage we seem to be doing for everybody, or anybody, or even for those affected by this. It's one thing if we're going to be using a high school just trying to play their music. But in order to get their package delivered, they have to use something of their own. And what they've been accustomed to is what they still consider their own. That's the bitch of it. They want to show how good they are. They want to show off everything that makes their school great. That even means showing something that ultimately pisses off other people because the heritage has already been stolen and they don't like it. And they're uncomfortable with it. And they're trying to tell everybody about it. And if we understand that, where can we compromise? And what form of identity can we compromise on? Is there such a thing of compromise? That's true. I don't know. I wish I had all the answers, and I don't. But regarding the company policy that Disney did, that is the company policy. Their own law for their own area. And the high school still wants to show themselves and prove themselves. In order to be part of that current culture of Disney right now, their own identity had to be stripped. They can enjoy Disney, but I'll tell you one thing, they're not going to enjoy it. If they understand about cultural diversity, it's going to be a war on. Just how are we supposed to be dealing with that? How are we supposed to understand it? How are we supposed to be working our way through this? How can I say these things? Because what other choice we got? Now, quite frankly, I don't like the idea of some mascot going through, or actually hearing the chant of one particular high school showing up their school colors and saying, hurt them, scalp them, beat them, do this, do that. We are the mighty, whatever the hell we are. But they show it, they demonstrate it, and they're trying to show their school pride and spirit. We try to overlook that, but there's always a point. And unfortunately, things have to change. Change is hard enough as it is because when you're so ingrained in the culture that you grew up with, it's hard as hell to do. And that makes it a bitch because it takes away your identity. Just to satisfy, because it's right. How to help the other guy out. Because like it or not, it is the right thing to do. It's not supposed to be pleasant, but it is correct. I hope the students can understand. When they get out of college, they're going to have to deal with questions like this facing them on a constant basis. If they're not dealing with this already as it is in their classes or in real life, that they have to understand that there's going to be extreme times and areas where cultures are clashing to a point. Either we find the common ground or we don't. And if we can't find the common ground to compromise, to understand, the wars continue. The misunderstanding, the misrepresentation, the stolen valor of sorts.